Hey, what's up, everybody? Um, in this video, I want to talk about men's health. Men's health, and one of the things that I've come to find out, um, and I want to preface this by saying I had an opportunity to go to a men's conference with that was hosted by Dr. Darius Daniels, and it was a great conference. It was called the Men's Conference. And the conference, for me, was a great opportunity for me to be motivated, be inspired, also be informed, and to really understand a little bit more about like men's health. So I was not aware of the fact that there's so many things that men struggle with as far as men's health, and um, one of the things that I found out that's alarming among men is that the suicide rate among men is 80%, right? There's a statistic that 40% of men in the United States, 40% of men say they don't have a close friend to go to in the time of like need, right? And that's a very high rate of men who say they don't have a close friend. And so what I've noticed in myself particular, and the reason why I went to this conference is a part of like why the conversation of men's health needs to be addressed, and there need to be more conversations surrounding it. One of the reasons why I decided to go to the men's conference is because I've been working and working and working, trying to get my company back up and trying to keep my company profitable. Also, um, my wife and I are in a transition as far as ministry wise, and also we've been working on we've been working on developing more content, working on our coaching business. We have our kids, right? But we both have full time jobs. And for me, my responsibility at home is, as a father, as a husband, also as a brother, a friend, an uncle, all those things, and particularly my responsibility at home for providing for shelter and protection and love and support and all those things was kind of weighing down on me. And coming up, when I found out about the men's conference a month into finding out about the men's conference, I told a brother of mine, my brother Joey, I said, I think we ought to go to this men's conference. I think it'd be good for us to have an opportunity to like find out more about, Pastor Darius Daniels' church, to be inspired and motivated and informed. And so up to the time of the men's conference, I began to kind of have this mental weight of guilt of even going to the conference. And one of the reasons why I had this mental weight of guilt of going to the conference is because I'm so used to working. I'm so used to taking care of responsibility at home. I'm so used to being present that I had not thought of the idea of me taking a break for me. Like when my family, when we go on vacation, it's usually a vacation for them and for me as well, but it's usually a family vacation. And I hadn't thought of taking a break for me. Women often do this. They'll go on girls' trips, they go to the spa day, they go, girls' night out and things of that nature. But for men, oftentimes we don't take time for ourselves. We don't take time to prioritize three things I want to highlight. Men don't take time in prioritizing. And then I'm going to follow it up with one main thing. So, leading up to going on the retreat, I had to even work up the courage to tell my wife, like, hey, I need a break. Like, 'cause nobody's done anything. And in my head, when I thought about like, okay, I need a break. Why do I need a break? Like nothing's going wrong. I'm working. Financially, we're doing fine. Relationally, we're doing fine. Physically, I'm doing fine. But mentally, I was at a point of like, okay, this is like, there's too much. The weight of responsibility is getting really, really heavy. And I just need to take a break. I need to relax. I need to like rest, recuperate, and retreat, right? So I think for men, we do not do this well because for us as men, we provide, we protect, right? We shelter, we love, we're husbands, brothers, uncles, fathers, and many of us don't think of like the effect of not resting, not retreating, and not having an opportunity to recuperate. You know, I remember when my grandmother passed, and often like when my grandmother passed, like my grandmother was like a second mother to me. So when my grandmother passed, I remember like the day I found out, I went straight to work. I didn't take a bereavement period from work. I went to work that day, and then we found out on a Friday. I went to work. No, we found out on a weekday. I went to work. We went to visit my grandmother uh, when she passed that night, and we went to view the body. That morning, I went to work, and that whole week, I still went to work. I did all my responsibilities. Now, we didn't have children at the time. My wife and I, this was only our close to our second year in marriage. And so that year was really, really a struggle for us. One of the reasons why is because when my grandmother passed, she was like the foundation of our family. She was like the glue that held our family together. Also, she was a woman of faith, and she passed away due to sickness. And for me, it was like a foundational piece mentally for me. Like, man, I knew we're not going to live forever, but for her to pass because due to illness didn't sit well with me mentally. And so my wife and I, we had a lot of different trials and I would say tribulations that year due to my grandmother passing. And one of the reasons why is because I did not process the grief that I was feeling. And I just like, hey, I got to get back to work. I got to get back to trying to get back to normal instead of processing the grief. And as men, we do not process grief and trouble and trials and trauma properly. A lot of times men will hear of, oh, hey, my homie down the street, he got shot, killed. And we'll like, of course, like it'll settle the fact that, okay, my homie is not here no more. But we still go on as though like, okay, I gotta get back to normal. I gotta get back to things to normal. And inside we're grieving, and we don't take the space to, number one, have the language in which we're able to express our grief. And oftentimes um, grief is expressed in ways that are not healthy for us, but we think that's a way that we're getting over the grief. And then, like, not only like grief, but trauma. Like, when you experience a breakup, right? And you break up with someone that you thought who would be in your life, a wife, a spouse, a girlfriend, especially if there's infidelity on that person's part, on her part, and the relationship doesn't end well, you experience a divorce and you lose like half, right? Most men do not process that well. Most men, they feel like, hey, the best way to get over someone is to get under someone else. And that's celebrated. And most men think that because, because I got under somebody else as fast as I could, I processed and I got over it, and I'm ready to move on to the next, right? And you get then there are situations where men get laid off from their jobs. They lose their primary source of income, and like they don't process it well. It leads to gambling, or it leads to drinking, it leads to like crashing out, right? And you wonder why these things happen is because the man hasn't really processed and doesn't have the language to express how he's feeling. Because oftentimes men, when we're boys, when we're growing up, we're taught men don't cry, men don't complain, right? And women, we give women the space to express when they're going through something. If they have a breakup, they'll go talk to their girlfriend. They call their mom. They call, and they have the language to basically express like, "Oh, I'm just so upset. How could he do this?" Blah blah blah. Men, we don't. We go into silence because we're taught men don't complain, men don't cry, not just physically cry, but men don't cry with their words, right? And all of that pain, anguish, trauma, and unexpressed anger is held inside, and the man is just going, trying to get back to a normal life. And soon you get areas in which he crashes out, like the man crashes out. I've seen this not just in particular, like middle class people, lower class people, whatever class you're in. You wonder why even athletes, right, when they finally get drafted and they finally make it and they get that $1 million contract, they immediately find something in which they could blow some steam on, right? And they take their money, and it's almost as though they're trying to process this trauma that they've had their whole life of being poor or being without. And all of a sudden they we don't think it's crashing out, but they know it's crashing out because of the irresponsible financial things that they buy to try to cover or try to make up for what they didn't have. When you grown up poor, listen, I come from Harvey. My family and I, we lived in a house full of roaches and rats, so I know what it's like to be poor, right? And when you come from poverty and all of a sudden you get wealth, and you did not process the trauma of being poor. See, this is one of the reasons why our counterparts, our Caucasian brothers, they don't, in at the statistic level in which we do it, they don't do that because they didn't have the financial trauma of growing up poor. So they don't have much to process when it comes to, hey, here's some money, here's a contract for X amount of dollars. Well, their families had X amount of dollars for, they've experienced a certain amount of wealth and financial means and responsibility. So they don't have the trauma in which we've had. They also don't have the trauma of like seeing family members and friends being killed, right? And finding out, even if you witness, right? I grew up in Harvey. I've witnessed people be shot right in front of me. Um, my neighbor was killed, right? And my neighbor's, I guess, boyfriend, or my neighbor's boyfriend was killed, and came to our house in the middle of the night to my dad to help, like with blood stains on them, right? So like when we go as and I want to speak to African American men. When we as African American men, even if you're Caucasian or whatever, Mexican, Hispanic, when you go through this type of trauma in your life and you do not process it, you don't have the language to, because we're taught, again, as men. Men don't cry. Men don't cry physically. Men don't cry without words. Men don't complain. Suck it up and move on, right? That's what we're taught. But all of that weight and all that trauma at some point is going to come down on you. And for me, right? Going to that conference opened my eyes to see the reason why we have men who are committing suicides at a high rate. We have men who are experiencing loneliness, especially in the age of digital technology, in which you may think, right, you are having a relationship with a woman on social media and not real life. You may think you have friends, right, on social media because you have people who are able to comment and you're able to comment back and you're able to DM people, but you're you may cognitively think that that's real communication. You're communicating with a person, but physiologically, right? The way our bodies are wired, you know that's not a real relationship. And one of the things I noticed in going to the conference, and I went with my brother Joey. We tried to get some other brothers to go, but unfortunately, like due to the timing of the day of the event, they couldn't make it. But what I realized is that men need connection with other men. And I say that because as men, we oftentimes, this is another statistic, that oftentimes, especially men who are married, we rely on our spouse for emotional support. And if you're not necessarily a emotionally open guy, even with your spouse, there's so much more weight that you're carrying with a man who is able to be open with his spouse, due to, again, the stigma that men don't cry, men don't cry with their words, men suck it up, men don't complain. And if you're in a relationship with a woman who looks at you in a certain way, whereas you feel as though even if you become vulnerable, she's going to judge you, then that is bad. And you're carrying more weight than the average man because you don't know what to do when you feel that way. And oftentimes, the best, not the best, let me back up my words. One of the things that you oftentimes relinquish to doing is finding another female uh, to be vulnerable with that does not have any ties to your life. Like there's no connection to your life because like you can tell her what you want to tell her, do what you want to her, and then shoot, go away, right? I'll have to see you again. And this happens often with men and women, right? And so I believe in order for like us as men that this trending statistic of loneliness to come down, this trending statistic of men who are attempting suicide and committing suicide at a high rate are not, and it's not just young men, it's older men, it's men of all ages who are crashing out. They're killing their girlfriends, their wives, they're killing themselves, they're killing their children. Like, and it's very alarming. And how do we combat this? How do we combat this? I want to speak of three things on how we combat this. And these are really, really three simple, practical things that every man needs. And I found this out going to the conference. When I finally got up the strength to tell my wife, who we've been married for 21 years, and I've like never taken I'm not say never in 21 years. I think this is the first time I've ever had the willingness to take a break on my own. Number one. And so and my wife and I successfully married, happily married. We've never cheated on each other, never stepped out on each other. We've never had the word divorce. We've never separated. So, but I believe every man needs these three things. These three things are: number one, rest. I think every human being needs proper rest. I mean, that just makes sense, right? But you can get a good amount of sleep and still not be rested. So what I mean by rest is rest where like your mind is at ease, because you can fall asleep and still be disturbed mentally, right? And get 8 hours of sleep with your eyes closed, but your mind is still wandering because of all the things that are on your mind. So people need rest. And I believe one of the ways to get rest is, as Jesus says, I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of Christ. Jesus says, come unto me all who are laden and heavy burden, and I will give you rest. Come unto me, all you have burdens. Give your burdens to me and I'll give you rest. Right? Jesus says, the peace I give is not as the world gives. So now there are physical and natural things that you can do to feel more rested, but rest for your soul is different. And Jesus says, I'll give you rest for your soul. Your soul is your mind, your will, emotions, your affections, your imagination. But all those things are tangled in webs of trauma, tangled in webs of grief, tangled in webs of pain, anger, regret. When your soul is tangled in all those areas, it's hard to rest. And so Jesus says, I'll offer you rest. So then I believe like men need to experience like rest practically, where the Bible says that God worked 6 days and took a day off. Now, a lot of us as men, we want to reach certain financial goals. We want to reach certain business goals. We want to reach certain goals as far as savings and like what we can afford, what we can buy, and what we want to have, right? But you shouldn't run yourself into the ground trying to acquire things, because at the end of the day, they're only things, and those things cannot give you back your health and your mental saneness. They cannot. Now, things, finances give you quality of life, right? Where you can live, what you can buy, what you can afford. But then there's intangible things, right? That basically are feed your soul and help your uh, um, quality of living, right? Because you can be alive and have life, but you won't be living. And there are a lot of people who can afford whatever they want, right? Millionaires, billionaires, but they're not living life. They're just existing. And they got money coming in. And if you don't have money coming in, you work, right? You're striving to acquire versus living life. And so the life that Jesus gives is rest. And one of the practical ways that we do that is taking a day off. I struggled with this because I was working 7 days a week. And one of my mentors, he said, hey, if you're a pastor, you're breaking one of the commandments, which is the commandment of taking the day off on the Sabbath. And I said to him, I said, well, it's kind of hard to take a day off because, I'm just so used to working. And he said this, he said, if you don't take a day off, it's going to eventually wear you down and break you down. And then you're also showing God you don't trust that his framework in which how he operates isn't enough for you to be successful. And I thought to myself, I said, wow, I'm going to say it again. When you don't take a Sabbath day because God took a day off, you're telling God that the framework in which he completed for man or anything to be successful doesn't work. And you can do it on your own. That's what you're telling God when you don't take a Sabbath day off. So when you take that day off, I believe that you're acknowledging, right, God's framework in which he set things in motion, and you're following his plan of rest and work. And you're showing God that you trust his way of doing things. And if you trust his way of doing things, he'll make up for you and give you more than enough to get back to work. And so that's number one, rest. Then I believe men need recreation. Every man needs to find something in which that's healthy, right? I'm a Christian, a follower of Christ. So like healthy, ethical is like the baseline. That's where I start. Ethical, meaning I'm not cheating on my wife. I'm not going to a strip club. That's not my recreation. I'm not gambling. That's not recreation for me. I'm not racing cars, right? Illegally. That's not recreation for me. Um, like there's certain things that's not recreation for me as a follower of Christ. But then there's certain things that for some people are recreational, but they're not healthy. Okay. And so for me, healthy recreation may be going to the gym, right? Now, for some people, unhealthy recreation is some people like to eat, some people are foodies, and that could be unhealthy, right? And so for me, working out is a recreation for me, right? Also, every now and then, I like watching superhero movies, right? Just sitting down, watching a movie with my family, that's recreation for me. And so that helps me to get back to baseline when there's been like a full 6 days of work. And I just want to go to the gym on a Saturday and not have to rush to get to work. And I can take my time. I can go on the massage chairs, right? I can foam roll, I can stretch, and I can like run. I can really, really get a good workout in, go home, take a nap, and watch some television later with my family. That's recreation for me. For some men, it's playing video games. For some men, it's a game of basketball. For some men, it's golf. Whatever gives you an opportunity to have a healthy outlet, right? Because if men don't have healthy outlets, men crash out. Men find a man will find a unhealthy outlet, and maybe the outlet is paintball, right? I like paintball, but I haven't had a chance. I like the concept idea of going to play paintball. I haven't had the opportunity to, but bowling, I like bowling as well. And so whatever a healthy outlet is, right, that you can do helps you to have recreation where you have an outlet that's healthy. And lastly, is recuperation. Now, every man needs to do something that fills his tank intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, and where he may be giving out, and he needs to replenish that as as an as an athlete. Men who play high level of sports, right? For them, recuperation is going to see a sports therapist. But that's a form of rest. But recuperation is, man, I've been playing at this high level and just pouring out mentally to be able to play at this high level. I need someone to put back mentally or give me access of mental capacity to help me to perform. And so that's why you see oftentimes athletes go visit legends, and they'll go visit retired legends, and they'll go visit coaches, and they'll go visit therapists, and they'll go visit things of that nature, because those type of things help them to recuperate in the ways in which they are able to perform better, because they have such a demand on who they are. I believe if you are a speaker, an entrepreneur, a business owner, if you're an employee in any capacity of leadership, a manager, assistant manager, executive assistant, if you're a father, a husband, I believe you should be in some type of coaching program that helps you with relationships. If you're working with people, as a man, if you're working with people, you need to develop how to be better in relationships and how to better communicate with people, because the more you want to go up the ladder in management, leadership, being a better father, being a better husband, being a better uncle or friend, you have to learn how to communicate better. And so being in the coaching space where you can go to like a mastermind, or like I went to the conference, going to conferences, going to different events, networking events, right? And events that help to pour into you, because you have to pour out to be able to serve the people that matter to you. And lastly, last thing, this is a bonus. So rest, recreation, And recuperation, last thing is, I believe all men need to develop a connection. And last thing is retreat. Men need to be able to retreat together to build bonds, right? Because the statistic that 40% of men don't have anybody to go to in a crisis or in a time of need can be very alarming, because oftentimes when a man feels like he has no one to go to, when life is on the line, oftentimes that man feels that, okay, well, there's nowhere else to go. I might as well not be here. And so men need to develop connections and be able to retreat. Oftentimes they say that women develop connections easier because women are face to face with each other. Oftentimes men are shoulder to shoulder, meaning like men enjoy activities and basketball, bowling, paintball, golf, things of that nature, where they're shoulder to shoulder. And those type of activities and retreats are good. I think they're a starting point. But in order to develop a deeper connection and a bond where this guy has my back, this guy understands me, this guy knows what I'm going through, this guy knows my struggles, he knows my goals, right? He knows like what I want to accomplish in life, and he knows basically the things in which will help me grow personally, spiritually, and can help me grow not just like financially, but as a person, right? And so I think men need to develop connections, and oftentimes it's harder for men to develop those connections because men, it's tough for us to be vulnerable. It's tough for us to be consistent, and it's really tough for us to communicate in ways that aren't for like financial gain or professional gain, and also like just being vague, sports talk, TV talk, women talk, talk about women and things of that nature. And so again, I think all these things are important to help men, because if the enemy, let's say the enemy, Satan and circumstance, wipes out men from society and lowers a man's ability to lead, lowers a man's ability to be productive in society, then we're going to have a very, very broken society. So I believe that we have to, and we must, at all costs, take care of ourselves as men and help other men take care of themselves. I want to continue the conversation. So if you like this and enjoyed this video, and if something I said spoke to you, share this with someone, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, peace.